Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome to this 13th session of Ergonomics for Beginners Industrial Design Perspective. Now, we are continuing with Module 3 Human Physical Dimension Concern out of the total 7 lectures in this. So, today's class is the measuring techniques of anthropometry. Now, last session whatever we have discussed about anthropometry, that we have stressed upon landmarks for various anthropometric measurements and relevant application aspects of standing and sitting, that is sit desk posture, and sitting on floor postures, that is specifically the cross legged and squatting, and that postures considering static as well as various dynamic these values. Now, today's topic is anthropometric measuring techniques. Now, the following anthropometric measuring techniques would help in understanding the procedure. Now, this measuring procedure has some postural considerations for structural and functional dimensions. Those physical human body dimensions which have an impact on design dimensions are basically the static, when it is we consider it as structural, and dynamic with the functional aspects in consideration. Like in these figures, there are many static figures as well as dynamic considerations have been shown here. Now, how to measure all the things? Now, structural body measurements include direct measurements of various body parts, that is say the heights, lengths, depths, breadths and the circumferences of head, neck, hands, these are the hands and legs in some standard postures or standard positions. Now, standard standing posture of static dimension measurements, it means that for static dimensional measurement purposes, the subject should stand in an erect balanced posture, looking in front with head and chest up, hands hanging in their normal positions, palm comfortably stretched and legs are at straight with heels almost together position. So, this is considered as standard standing posture for static body measurements. Now, in a sitting posture, it would be, in a sitting posture, the subject should sit on a seat at the height of popliteal level this is the popliteal level, so that thighs can rest on a flat surface or a flat on the seat surface with a 90-degree angle. So, all the this elbow angle, hip angle and the popliteal, that is knee, below the knee angle, all are at a 90-degree positions, and the this heel, this in front of that heel, this is also 90-degree. Trunk position should be straight, erect and vertical, perfectly at a comfortable 90-degree angle at hip, with the neck straight, looking horizontally forward. The arm should be in a normal lateral hanging position with a 90-degree elbow angle, keeping the forearm horizontally forward with the palm spreading. So, this is the standard posture for static sitting measurements in a seat desk posture. Now, other postures for static dimension measurements are in other commonly used Indian postures, such as sitting on the floor cross-legged and in a squatting posture, the trunk will be in a comfortably upright vertical position with head up for static measurements. Now, while adopting any specific posture to do certain activity, at that time whatever the body takes the shape in that particular position, the specific body measurements will be are the dynamic considerations. Now, in the case of dynamic body dimensional measurements, as the body functional contexts vary, the comfortable and postures, the comfortable work postures should be maintained, and measurements of the body parts in such positions should be taken with extension and flexing movements, so that various reach values in different positions are normally taken care of. In this case, where in this figure, when we are measuring the upper comfortable reach limit and the middle comfortable reach limit, the person has to feel comfort while reaching to those points, because this dimension will be required to decide some design dimensions, where to reach that point he should have a comfort feeling. Now, the collection of body structural data in static body positions is easier to measure than the collection of body functional data in dynamic body positions. So, what type of dynamic dimension we require, it depends on specific context. Now, we are coming to the measuring methods. In certain requirement, when the body dimensions of a particular target users group is not available, we may need to generate some data of our own, and for that we require to measure some dimensions, taking consideration of a relatively likely the target users group. Now, what would be the measuring methods, that now we are going to discuss. Now, both direct and indirect measuring procedures are followed to collect anthropometric data from selected subjects in a particular population group. Now, direct and indirect body measuring may be considered separately or taken both simultaneously depending on the context of the dimensional requirement and the suitability of the study. Now, we will see some of the measuring techniques. Now, the direct body measuring requirements, that is instruments are commonly used, are a set of anthropometric instruments. That is, if we see from the clockwise movement, we will see that first is from the top, this is that anthropometric rods. Anthropometric rod set, these rods marked in per millimeter scale are joined together to make a single scale from 0 to 200 centimeter. Like if we see these things, suppose these are the anthropometric rod sets. There are total 4 sets are there. So, the first rod has from 1 to 51 marks, means all the things, all the pieces have 50 marks, 50 centimeter marks. Now, one after another, if we join to make a scale to a full rod, it will be useful to measure a total height, dimension and all others, that I am going to demonstrate now. Suppose for a standing purpose, now with the base, either we may hold the rod directly placed on a floor, or we may have a base so that it can stand on it, and then go on putting the rods one after another the top, so that it can form a total height of 200 centimeters. Now, each rod will have, it has a 2 branches. So, if we have keep like this way, then it, suppose this is the total height, and if a person stand here, then we can fix it to the simple height, and then after reading here the total dimension we can get it. Now, this figure will show now in, and then sliding branch sets. These are the 2 sliding branch sets and carved branches. Carved branches are like this. Suppose this is required here, the in a circular way, the centimeter, the millimeter marks are here maintained. So, in certain cases where we need to measure the group distances, where this measurement is not possible with this type of attachment, means if we have normally what has happened, keeping fixed one side and another side, if we slide like this way and the body will be in between, then with this we can have the total measurements dimension from here. But in certain cases where we require to measure groups. These groups are not possible to measure with these anthropometric rods. There this would be better. Suppose we want to measure these 2 points. So, like this way, if we fix it here and then we can measure the reading from this scale, so it would be good. Another thing is that and then spreading caliper. Spreading caliper is this, that if I want to measure, so this arm length, the small distances like this, or maybe these distances, thickness, etc., it will be easier to measure with this. In certain cases, also we may require to measure with this, where the distance of this is put here in a half mark scale. Now, this is also will be measured for this different lengths, breadths and depths, etc. So, the measurement we can read from this point. So, these are the some standard equipment are normally used. The rod sets, whatever we demonstrated right now, it looks like this, and when you join one after another, it becomes a total rod set. Means anthropometric rods, when all the pieces are joined, it makes a total 200 centimeter rod. Now, for this calipers, whatever we showed right now, for the chest caliper and etc., for the to measure this distance, sliding caliper, you can slide it in, sliding caliper for this type of measurements. Now, for seating and other requirements. For the seating requirement or for body measurement, this is the weighing scale. There are varieties of weighing scales. It depends on the accuracy you require. Accordingly, the weighing machines can be selected. Now, here we are showing one normal bathroom scale that can also be used to measure the body weight. And then a height adjustable stool. This height adjustable stool is necessary, so that short height, medium height or tall height people, when he sits on it, this height can be adjusted according to their popliteal height. So, that the standard sitting posture for static body measurement that just we have shown right now just below, this type of posture can be maintained. Now, for measuring the different grips, the grip dimension, inner side grip dimension, for anything to design some handle type of thing where we need to hold. So, what would be the dimension for this? What would be the dimension for that purpose? Now, for the grip cone with marks with diameter is there like this. Some other relevant measuring devices specifically developed for suitability to measure respective measurements, such as adjustable foot measuring instrument. If we want to measure the different foot sizes, then some adjustable length from boxes one can make it, and then just keep your foot within that box, and accordingly you slide the measuring piece, so that you can get the total foot length etc., or foot depth, something like that. Means boxes and blocks can also be used, and with specifically marked a conical device for measuring the grip diameter and inner circumferences of a grip can be used. Now, for some other purposes, like if I want to know the different sizes, the measurements of circumferences, then depths and then breadths of fingers. For that, device containing various diameter holes for measuring finger diameter etcetera are also used. Means what happen? You need to put your finger in all these things where it fits, that would be your measurement. Now, for circumference etcetera, for the body circumference, head like that, different circumferences of this, non-stretchable tapes are used. Why it has to be non-stretchable? Because if it stretches, so if with a little more pressure, if it becomes elastic and stretches, then measurement will be wrong. So, for this purpose, non-stretchable tapes are used. So, for specific measurements, specific devices may also be created. Whatever equipment or measuring devices we discussed now, these are normally used, but for specific purpose, some data we require, maybe in dynamic position or in static. So, we can develop our own measuring devices. But one thing is that when we develop such devices, it has to be justified for what measurement it would be used and what type of calibration refinement we are considering for that. Now, this here we can say that with the non-stretchable tape, the circumferences are being measured. Anthropometric rod set in this right hand figure being used to measure the different heights. Now, another measuring device or system, that is the anthropometric board with grid marks. So, anthropometric boards are the both sides are this is the anthropometric board, and with this anthropometric board, if a person stand and extend his arm or whatever, there the height, length, breadth, thickness etcetera can directly be measured reading the grids. So, representative, this figure B here, it is a representative anthropometric measuring technique using anthropometric board as shown here in standing posture. So, here in different bending also reach values etcetera can be measured using this anthropometric board, and there may be varieties of anthropometric board we can use. We may have 3 or 4 side closed grids, even the floor also, and then we can have videography from different angles to get specific measurement values. Now, in this figure we are showing that the figure showing measuring body height. So, now sliding this bar on the anthropometric rod, body heights, in this case the shoulder height is being measured, but using so various heights can be measured with this. Now, this small video tape, it says that the techniques of this. Now, here we are showing only head, eye, sternum, shoulder, etc., but when you put it below, then respective heights also can be measured. But in this video, it is shown that if we do not use a standard base like this, the standard base, then what has happened? This rod, it may bend. So, for body measurements, bending of rod should not be allowed. Now, the breadth and depth measurement using anthropometric rod set, just now we mentioned that with like this way, spreading this one, where it is the body fits, you can increase or decrease the size and specific measurements can be done. So, this small video here, this clipping, it shows that how these measurements are used. Now, in a sitting posture, that is or the sit desk posture, now here the stool, the adjustable stool is used so that the 90-degree positions at elbow, thigh and foot can be maintained, and the hip also can be maintained, and then the same anthropometric rod can be used for this. In this also, as it is a demonstration video, here it is being demonstrated that without using, or if we do not use the base plate here, then there would be a chance of bending of this rod, and with this the measurement may not be correct. So, in these cases specifically for the measuring heights etc., the base of piece should be used to maintain the rod in a upright position. Now, till now we have discussed the direct measurement system, means you have the person and then measure directly with the landmarks in that subject's body. Now, there are some indirect methods where this direct measurement is not possible, or in a small time we may require to measure many subjects. So, indirect measurements may be taken through photographic methods, means taking photographs, using still photography and filming the whole body and or parts from different angles against a marked grid background, or superimposition of a grid on the photographed human body. But in this case, we must consider the problem of parallax error. With this photograph, from this filming of the body, human body, when he is in an action, we can have dynamic dimensions. Now, all this photography and films etc., there are some softwares available. Through those softwares, direct measurement values can be collected. Now, some caution on this. Caution is that to guard against parallax error, that is the problems where the actual dimensions may change, much care must be taken, or dynamic measurements the subjects are asked to perform for the intended tasks in actual and or simulated situations, and the relevant measurements are taken. So, the parallax error has to be considered. Now, another thing is that when we measure the dynamic reach values, so in this case the left hand figure it says that the same that upper comfortable reach and middle comfortable reach when we are measuring, the subject may leave some marks denoting the limits to which they can stretch their limbs in a comfortable position. Like while putting it, if he has a chalk on his hand or a marking device on his hand, so while doing this activity he can put marks on this grid, so that the total arm movement pattern one can measure directly on this. So, different types of grids are also used to measure these marks, means with this height, length from the axis, the body axis etcetera, one can measure. Now, this whatever we discussed, photography or using direct measuring equipment, these are all direct or indirect, but recent development in this field is using whole body scanner system that gives digital dimensions. In this class, we are discussing the direct method system. So, this digital dimension measuring through whole body scanner we are not discussing, but these facilities are there, and with this digital human body scanner in a very small time, many people with many body dimensions one can measure. This is for mass measurement purpose. Now, thing comes that accuracy of the measurements. Now, few points we must understand. For cyclic dimensional changes, as in the chest, the inflated circumferences must be considered if the aim of the design is to make a rigid armor type of equipment covering the body. Means, when we are measuring some circumference, so now while breathing out it collapses, and while breathing in it expands. Now, if we want to make a rigid armor there, if we use the collapsed chest circumference, then in actual situation it may not be suitable when we need to take breath in. In that case, the maximum dimension here we must consider, and for that with the chest span expanded position we need to measure this, and then some other allowances, that is extra value should be considered for design specifications. And depending on the design, when the total surface circumference is required, the tape should be held loosely. Tightly pulled tape may be used when or may be used only to avoid excess flabbiness of skin folds etc. Suppose if we have a very flappy arm, Then if you want to measure that circumference for a certain design, there this floppiness of this through or this fat, it may not necessary to show. There may be little tightly held tape should be used. Now, it depends for what purpose we are going to use this measurement, and accordingly see the whether it will be tightly held or loosely. If there is no specific purpose, the average measurements of both the loose and tight tapes would be appropriate for circumferences. Generally, the measurements of single dimensions are taken twice, because there may be some kind of human error to avoid this. And another issue is that if I want to measure, suppose I want to make a working surface, platform height. Normally, it is said that it should be about your normal elbow height at the normal hanging arm hanging position. Now, whether that would be that height, for what height we should have right elbow height or left elbow height. In that case, right elbow height and left elbow height both to be measured, and average we can be used. These are the some general, and this is for to fix the basic design dimension, but to work on it, then some dynamic requirement is necessary, because at this erect position we cannot exert any good work activity. So, there are some other different body process like a little bending and etcetera is all are there. So, for that a specific dynamic time consideration is necessary. So, this design requirement cases we will discuss in next classes. If there is any difference, the average is to be recorded, because though the subject is in a static posture due to various body rhythms, landmark positions may vary. Whatever procedures are used before starting the intended landmarks on the body or the reach limits should be decided upon and standardized. Means, while measuring some dimension, first the body landmarks to be noted and then go for measurement. So, with the subject and the equipment, we do not need to look for the landmarks, and all the researchers of a study or survey team should follow the same methods, because suppose we are measuring 100 people for in a certain time period, we may appoint 5 or 6 people or maybe more. So, for everybody should follow the same measuring techniques, same measuring landmarks, then only the collective data will be fault free. The measurement procedure should be practiced earlier, and while actually measuring the subject, one should not take much time, because to maintain that so called standard anthropometric posture is little difficult. For longer time we cannot maintain that. So, there will be some deviation. Now, if the deviation is there, So, when we are measuring certain dimensions, body was in a posture, and when we are measuring some other dimensions, then body may change its shape. So, the first practice has to be done, so that with subject we should not spend much time. Otherwise, body positions and reach points would change. After each and every measurement is taken, it should be noted down in a pre-designed schedule. Completion of collected data should be done from there, compilation has to be made, and then statistical treatment will be there. Direct entry in that data processing machine is direct entry of data directly into the data processing machine without using an intermediate data schedule during the study could be done in order to reduce time and effort. But in this case, a proper check has to be maintained whether the data entry is done properly. But if entry mistakes are made, these would be very difficult to rectify, because once it is entered directly into the machine, it will be little difficult to rectify it. Now, the subjects, now we have discussed the measuring techniques, but on whom we are measuring the subjects, and what would be the sample size selection procedure? Should we measure only 5 persons to have a dimension, or 100 persons, or 2000 persons? How many? What will be the sampling procedure? The larger the random sample sizes of the survey, the greater the accuracy and reliability will be there. Normally, the users of anthropometric data use ready reference sources normally, but if some typical data is not readily available, then small survey on the population of intended users may be conducted, and for that purpose, for that samples of roughly 20% larger size, 20% small size, and 60% random may be collected from the study group, in order to avoid missing the data covering the extreme ends, lower and higher sides of the range. Means, in a population, if we just measure some 100 people, so these 100 people may represent smaller sizes or maybe taller sizes. To get a normal bell shaped curve of sample representation, it would be easier, better if some calculated sample size sampling is done. Normally, they said that by visual judgment, select 20% of the samples group, large sizes, 20% small sizes, and rest 60% randomly selected. So, what is happened? Both the ends containing smaller size and tallest size all will be there. So, these are the minimum requirement one can say. Now, summary of the today's class. So, today whatever we discussed, this if summarily if we say the direct anthropometric references are available from many sources, various sources are there, but whatever you require specifically may not be ready available, some dimensions, and if specific requirements are there, we may need to generate of our own. This class demonstrated the common techniques of anthropometric measuring procedures. Equipments are used and specific measuring devices to suit the data collection can also be developed as required. Both the direct and indirect methods can be used suitable to record with caution of accuracy of the measurements and the subject selection procedure. With this, we can say that in this module number 3, that human physical dimension concern, we are concluding the class 13 measuring techniques. Next class 14 will be the statistical treatment of data and percentile calculations. That will be the in next class. So, with this we are concluding today's session. So, we will see you in next class. Thank you.